Hi, goodness. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Not too bad. What's your day been like so far?
It's been quite intense. Just been doing like assignments for uni, really.
Are you on your study day today?
Yeah.
That's good. It's nice that you can take it at home as well. I know a few people have to go in. Fab. So can you just kind of introduce yourself quickly, kind of which specialism you're on, and then we'll kind of delve in afterwards.
So, my name is Goodness. I'm doing the Histocompatibility and Immunogenetics specialism, and I'm in my first year. And yeah, I have a background so I studied biomedical sciences at uni. So that's pretty much my background. And yeah, I just found myself in H&I.
Yeah. How did you get into that? Because biomed is quite broad. So how did you decide that you wanted to do that one?
So initially I was supposed to do like a 4-year industrial experience biomedical science degree. So in my second year, that's like when you apply to like your placement and whatnot. So I knew I wanted to do something like alongside like the like immunology like field or whatever. I wasn't potentially like sure what I wanted to do. So my university was like advertising like different placement posts and whatnot, and then I saw one for H&I. I didn't know what H&I was beforehand, but I thought, you know what, like I saw immunogenetics, it has something to do with immunology, like I might as well apply. So when I was obviously doing my research for the interview for that, I was like, okay, like this is interesting. I can see myself like doing this. Like I don't mind. And I had my interview, and then like I got the place for the placement, and then I think like because this was like last year, around this time last year when I was supposed to start my placement year, that's when like COVID hit again. So like it was like crazy in the hospitals. So I think like the day before I was supposed to start, like I got told like, you know, we're so sorry, like the COVID cases are so high right now, like we can't like take you in for your placement. And obviously like I was so gutted, like I was so excited to like do H&I and whatnot. But I had to go like into my final third year. But obviously like I still had the interest and wanted to do H&I. At that point, like I didn't know about the STP or anything like that. So when it came to like applications opening, I got like an email from my supervisor that I was supposed to do my placement with, and she asked me like, you know, have I heard about the STP? Of applying, da da da. And obviously because I didn't have an experience, I didn't like think I should, or I wasn't planning on like applying. And then I guess just randomly I woke up one day and was like, you know what, why not? Like I don't have anything to lose. If anything, it's experience and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up applying for H&I.
That's amazing. So you got on first time then?
Yeah.
That's really good. But yeah, I think that's true. Even if you hadn't have gotten on, it's good to kind of know the questions and know the format and stuff beforehand. That is so kind of lucky that you fell into that. Although it's not lucky that the placement didn't happen.
Yeah, that was very, very sad.
Was that with like an NHS lab? Have you kind of kept in touch with
Yeah.
that?
It was going to be like the hospital that was associated with my uni. So it was, yeah.
How big is your specialism? Because I had never heard of it. I've not heard of a lot of them, so.
I think we're quite like a little small community. Like I even think like this year, I think there isn't like up to 10 of us. I think like there isn't like that many of us. But like there are like different labs like across the country and whatnot. So we're quite small, but like we're there somewhere.
Spread out.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, which hospital trust are you kind of based at? Did you have to move to start your specialism, or were you able to kind of carry on?
Like I'm like originally would I say like from London, but obviously I did my undergrad in Manchester, and then I got the post in like Sheffield area, so I had to like move, but it wasn't too like I'm used to being like up north anyway, so it wasn't like too bad of a move. And so because of like H&I, like I'm based at the NHSBT, so it's what am I trying to say, like it's far but it's not far, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
it's an easy adjustment.
I went to uni in Sheffield and I absolutely loved it. If I could move back just with our lab, I would. So what is H&I? Because yeah, I'd never really heard of it, and I did do a quick Wikipedia, but
So H&I, or I would say H&I, essentially, it's it's like a service that supports like organ transplantations, stem cell transplantations, blood transfusions, and then like the immunogenetic side of things is like testing for like certain diseases and drug hypersensitivities. So essentially it works by detecting like specific antigens, so human leukocyte antigens, to essentially ensure that transplantations go well, transfusions go well, and then people also be diagnosed with different diseases, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does.
So,
will a lot of your patients that are coming through be waiting for a transplant, or is it something that you carry on doing post-transplant as well?
So at my lab, like we specifically do like renal transplants, so like kidneys, for example. So we see like patients before, so while they're waiting, as well as afterwards. So like there's a lot of testing in order to find like a correct like donor, but then also to monitor that patient as they go on like throughout the years to make sure that like the transplantation is still successful, that there's no like graft rejection or anything like that. So it's sort of like you're following the patient as they go on even after the transplantation. So
that's really nice, kind of being able to stay with them, and even though I'm guessing you're not patient facing, kind of following them along. So with the transplantations, do you do adult and children, or do you kind of focus mainly on one?
it's a bit of both. Like you see people from like children as young as like infants up to like the elderly. So yeah, it's very broad. Like you can always tell like if it's like a child, or especially because you have like their date of birth and whatnot. So we see like a really broad range of patients, and it's quite sad like when you see like when it's a child coming, or even like an elderly person, but it's like kind of makes you want to like ensure like you actually find like the correct donor and whatnot. So yeah.
It's one of those things that's kind of spread across healthcare. Is it's sad that they're there, but if you can try to help, I guess that's always a plus. Is your team quite big then? Do you work with other specialisms like biochem, or are you enclosed just in H&I?
So like at like my lab, like we obviously have like our H&I department, and I do know that like we would work obviously with other like specialisms, especially when it comes to like blood transfusions. Like we might work with like the hematology team or like the red cell immunology team in order to like confer on like results and stuff like that, as well as like working with medical teams to actually see like what's going on with the patient and to talk to like the actual doctor and whatnot. But for the most part, it's literally just like our like H&I department, and we're split into two different departments. So you have like serology and then you have molecular. So I've been working in serology so far, and that's like where like you have like the antibody testing and like cross matching, and that essentially is like where you're trying to determine whether this patient would be good for a potential donor. And then you have the molecular side, and that's like where you have your HLA typing, so you're actually trying to determine what someone's HLA type is, and then that also feeds into like looking for disease associations and drug hypersensitivity. So I've been working also on the serology side of things, and eventually like I'd sort of transfer over to molecular like in the future months and whatnot.
So afterwards, would you kind of specialize into serology or molecular, or will you balance both of them once you finish the STP?
From what I've seen, like the colleagues that I work with, it's like everyone's set in their own department. So it's like you obviously would have knowledge of both departments, but you're specializing in one or the other, because although that is the whole H&I like field, they do different things, if that makes sense. So like immunogenetics, as well as like doing the HLA typing, they specialize more so in like the disease associations and the drug hypersensitivities, whereas serology doesn't do that. So you'd probably specialize in one or the other, although you probably have knowledge of both.
Yeah. Is there one that you're particularly interested in, or will you have to wait until you've gone to molecular?
Maybe I'm biased because I've been doing serology, so far like I've been enjoying serology, but I'm assuming that when I go to molecular, I'd enjoy that too, so then I'd probably have the decision of figuring out which one I actually want to like go into more.
I just had a question. What kind of diseases are you looking for on the molecular side? Like what associations?
So like for example, patients that have celiac disease, in like that population of patients, there is a HLA, I believe it's like HLA-DQ genes that are associated with celiac disease. So if, for example, a patient has come in and they're like suspected of having celiac disease, you could refer them to H&I service, whereby like we'd be able to like HLA type that patient, and if you found the patient had that HLA allele, then it will sort of be like a confirmation, like diagnosis that okay, like you do have celiac disease, and then going forward with obviously like, avoid gluten and whatnot. And then with drug hypersensitivities, you have for example, we see like a lot of HIV patients. So with HIV, like a treatment could be like abacavir, and that like helps to like treat HIV. But then in some HIV patients, you get some of them have adverse reactions whereby abacavir doesn't work because their body like physically is like fighting it off. So like if that happened to a patient, they could be referred to H&I service where you'd HLA type them, and if they had like the HLA allele for abacavir hypersensitivity, and I believe that is HLA B57, I believe, B5701, I believe. So if they had that HLA, then obviously that would be a diagnosis that okay, you have abacavir hypersensitivity. Going forward, you might want to use a different form of treatment. So
that's really interesting. I would never have kind of put celiac disease and HIV in your specialism. That's really cool.
There's a lot of like genetic basis to a lot of like diseases and hypersensitivities. So we look at like how that relates to HLA and whatnot. So it's very broad in the kind of things that we like do. And I think that's what makes it interesting. That no day is like the same. There's like so much, like learning so much to do. So
yeah, you must have a really wide range of people that come to you with like questions and patients and everything. So if you're on first year now, which are your other rotations alongside H&I?
So we have biochemistry, we have hematology and transfusion, and then we have genetics. And I believe we also have, because I guess H&I is like immunology, we also have to do like immunology like towards like the beginning of second year. So yeah, I think it's just those other four. Yeah.
So you still in H&I at the moment, and then you'll go over to your other ones like next year. Have you had uni so far then?
Yeah, we had it was a 5-week like teaching block, and it was all online, which was interesting. I never thought I would actually say like I miss like in-person teaching, but it was interesting to say the least. Very intense. Very like it felt like an actual like going into work. Like some days you start at 9 or 10 and finish up to like 4, and like, it was very detailed. Like this hour you're doing this lecture, next hour you're doing that lecture. Like it was very, very detailed.
Yeah. Was there enough time to kind of stay on top of everything, or was it just quite? Yeah.
I think it was like, for example, like you could have had like 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. is like this lecture, 10 a.m. to 11 this lecture, and they like, obviously put 1 hour blocks for all these lectures, but in reality it could take like 3 hours to do one lecture. So I think in that regard it was a bit like you could be like 8 p.m. 9 p.m. still doing lectures. So I think it was very intense in like that, but then I guess you should also think like they're sort of squishing like a whole year's worth of teaching into 5 weeks. So it's sort of like you kind of like expect it to be intense. So I think that's why like I appreciate study days. We can actually go back on what you were taught and actually make sure that you actually understand and whatnot. So yeah.
No, I found it exactly the same. I was so behind by the end of the uni block, and then I was like, great, now I'm back at work. I have no time.
Yeah.
How did you find like the content of the teaching?
So the way it was split up was like live lectures that like you had to attend, pre-recorded lectures, and then e-learning packages. Personally, I think I preferred more so like the live lectures and the pre-recorded lecture because I felt like it was more structured in terms of you actually knew what you had to learn. Whereas like learning packages, it just felt like it was not all over the place, but all over the place in the sense that you didn't really know what was just there for like filler information and what was there that you actually needed to know. So I think it was just a bit confusing trying to figure out what I actually needed to know in order like to complete the masters and whatnot. But other than that, like I think the teaching was like pretty good. I guess it was just having to like look at the screen like all the time just got a bit repetitive. But I think it was uni. Like it felt good to be back. Like because I came straight from like an undergraduate degree. It kind of felt like I was used to it. Like it wasn't anything like that was like a shock to me or anything like that. So
Still kind of in the process. Did you meet any of your, obviously not in person, but, or maybe in person at the other points, have you met anyone else on H&I?
No, I haven't met anyone in person, but then we have like, you know, like Facebook group chats, or like when we had like lectures, like you see them on cameras and whatnot, but I haven't met anyone in person at the moment, no.
Hopefully you'll be able to next year.
Hopefully.
Are there any other trainees that you know of in Sheffield? Or?
So like we obviously have like our training network, so I have like spoken to other trainees that are in Sheffield, like the surrounding areas like Leeds and whatnot, but I haven't met like any of them in person or anyone else like around my specialism around Sheffield area, no.
It can be difficult, like especially if you've not got other trainees in your specific department. I think trying to find people to reach out to.
Yeah.
So with the tests, what kind of test would you do? Obviously, you said the HLA type N. How do you do that? I really have no idea.
So like from what I understand of the molecular side, a lot of like the HLA typing is like PCR methods, so like that whole like expansion quantification of DNA in order to like actually be able to quantify it and then actually read someone's like DNA profile and whatnot, and then be able to tell the different like HLAs like a patient has. So I know like with H&I, like you look at HLAs A, B, and C, and then DP, DQ, and DR. So those are like the 6 that like you tend to like actually analyze in order to know whether a patient or donor can be matched. So like the more they're matched, the better. But obviously, unless you have like a related donor, the likelihood of finding like a complete match probably unlikely. So the more you can match, obviously the better. So it's like you have to sort of do that all the analysis in order to figure out, okay, they might be mismatched on this HLA, but if they're matched on others, possibility of a transplantation might be more likely, but just to monitor the patient in order to know that they don't have any like specific antibodies or anything like that that could cause rejection or anything like that. So it's more so like PCR methods, like PCR methods, that I think, yeah, just basic PCR methods, that, as well as, NGS as well. So next generation sequencing, which is obviously more specific. So at my lab, those are the 2 that they mainly do, and that like is specific enough in order to like determine someone's HLA type to like tell like their doctor or their transplantation team. So yeah.
With the kidneys, because you said that you're kind of like a renal centre, do you get a lot of related donors? Because I feel like that's one that I definitely know you can easily, well, not easily, but it's a bit easier to find a related donor because you can live with just one kidney.
Like from what I've seen, like when it comes to like antibody testing for like patients that are looking for transplants or that have had transplants, what I have seen is that the donor usually is unrelated, because it's usually like, so for example, you have donor specific HLA antibodies, and that essentially is that your body can produce antibodies to HLAs that they don't recognize. So if you have like a mismatched donor, which usually is unrelated, your body, there's a possibility that you could have antibodies that could like react to that kidney, causing rejection. So from a lot of testing that I've done, like I've seen like patients that have had transplants that do have DSAs, so that would indicate that it probably came from like an unrelated, or it could have been a related, but maybe not like a sibling. It could have been like a parent or something like that. So it wasn't exactly like a complete match.
Yeah.
So I think it would be ideal if you had like, you know, someone in your family to give you a donor, but I think more so it is like from like the donor register or anything like that. And then I think that's why they're probably more like strict on, okay, we need to make sure that if we do have this transplantation or transfusion going on, that we make sure that the patient has a good chance of actually accepting the donor. So yeah,
it's like a plug for the organ donor register, isn't it? Are there quite a lot of cases where you can't match someone up then, and you have to kind of go back and say that there's not a suitable donor kidney?
Yeah, like you have patients where, so for example, if you did like HLA antibody testing, and that essentially is where like you can test like a patient's blood serum against like a known set of HLAs, And that's like without even testing to an actual donor, just like a known set of HLA alleles that you would already have like stored in the lab. And if they came back like extremely positive, like they had antibodies for like all those HLAs, the likelihood of finding a potential donor that doesn't have any of those HLAs is obviously very hard. So patients like that, like there's a struggle of like, okay, the patient needs like a donor, but they've got so many antibodies against like known HLAs, like what do you do type of thing. So like I think usually you have like, it could be like you might have to desensitize that patient, so like antibody removal and stuff like that in order to help them like get like a kidney. But it's very difficult because it's like these are what antibodies that the person has, so it's like you can't really like fight with nature or anything like that. So I guess it's just about having to keep testing that patient to see whether there's any change over time, whether there's any like desensitization events that have helped the patient to sort of reduce like the like percentage of like antibodies that you have. So like a lot of these HLA alleles, and if that happens, then obviously the likelihood of them getting a donor would be like increased. But it can be quite sad when you see the same patient coming in and they're still very positive, and you know that they need a donor. So yeah.
I had no idea that you could even do like antibody removal or desensitization or whatever. That was something completely new. How did you find the application? Because 2021 was a bit of a different situation, I think.
I think because of like how I came to apply, like my application process was a bit different in the sense that when I like had heard like the applications had opened, I think because the time that I heard it had opened, I still wasn't sure if I wanted to apply or not, so I didn't necessarily like pay as much attention to it. But then I had like did my research on like the past like applications, how they had been, so I sort of had it in my mind of like the previous years. But then when it came to actually applying, obviously I saw it was different. And so going into like the actual application process, like, you know, you do like the normal, like your name, your university, all of those like formalities, and when it came to actual like questions, it was interesting to think of like, what do I actually say, especially because I didn't have any experience. I didn't really know what to like put for like a lot of the answers. But then reading like the brief that they gave you, and like they wanted you to obviously like the core person specification, like to go through that and the job description, I sort of just literally had it side by side, like tabs, like my application here and the like documents here. Literally read through all of them, like, hey, they want me to show this, what have I done to show this? And actually went through literally each one, okay, how have I done this, and then incorporated that into my application. And I think that really helped me to like produce an application that I thought, okay, like maybe I have like a fighting chance of like, you know, like making it to the next stage. So obviously when I was applying, there was the situational judgment test that was supposed to happen. So obviously when I saw that, I was like, okay, like, you know, I've got to like, you know, try to revise, try to do some questions online. And then when it came to actually like doing the test, I remember trying to find the link for it. And I was like panicking because it's like it was getting towards the deadline. I couldn't find it. Like I thought, oh my gosh, like what's going on? And then I think they then released like the next day like a statement on their website, like they some issues, they had to take it down, like they're no longer using it as part of the application. And I was just sort of like, oh wow, like I was revising, like I was trying to put the work in, like running this, and then last minute it's like, oh okay, sorry, we're not using it no more. So it was then like, okay, they're only basing your application based on like what you put in your answers. I was like, okay, that's even more pressure, like hopefully like, you know, it's good. So then you didn't have like the shortlisting where you chose like where you wanted to be based, so you went through that. And then I guess it was just like, I wouldn't say like a few months even, like, because I think I heard back like while I was doing like my summer exams. So it was like in the middle of that, like I heard back, oh, like, you know, you've been invited for like an interview, and I don't even know like what was going through my head. I think it was just more so like, I'm shocked, I'm happy, but it's like I have exams tomorrow. Like it was like good timing but bad timing at the same time, because like it was right in the middle of my exam period. But like the brief they gave you of like, you know, how to prepare, like I wasn't expecting it to be so sciencey, which is kind of what shocked me. Like it was very, because I think when you think of interviews, you know, like how do you show teamwork, you know, tell me a time you've done this, but it's like they actually wanted to make sure that you knew like the science of what you were trying to apply for. So it literally felt like revising for a test. Like I literally had a whole document, like plans for H9 interview, okay, what is this, like, and I literally I spent ages like going through it, asking for help, speaking to current trainees. I actually found people even on LinkedIn, like trying to do all I could to get as much help as I could. So I did that. Then I had my interview, and what was actually quite interesting was because of like when I got like my you have an interview, they didn't have like a location of where the NHSBT was based. Like all it said was West Midlands. So I was like, oh okay, like where in West Midlands, like. Because obviously I wanted to like do my research beforehand of like, you know, anything specific to like that branch or anything like that, but obviously I didn't know. So I remember emailing like the school to ask like, oh, you know, like where is it based? And they told me it was based in I think Birmingham or something like that. So I was like, okay, like, so I sent some of my answers around like Birmingham, and then when it came, I think the day before my interview, like something just told me, you know, like check the email, because they like had CC'd the people that were interviewing me in the email that they had sent me. And then when I checked like their names and like what they had done in like H9 and whatnot, I saw that none of them worked in Birmingham. They worked somewhere completely different to obviously like the Sheffield area. So I was like, this is interesting. Like this is what like the school had told me.
Yeah.
So I literally had to think, okay, you know what? The school told me this. I'm seeing something completely different. Like I didn't want to take the risk of ignoring what I saw. So I was like, okay, let me prepare answers for what I've seen, because these are the people that actually interviewed me. And then had the interview. That was very I think maybe because I knew it was going to be sciencey, I thought it would be like a direct question as to like, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this test do? But it was very vague in the sense that it wasn't a direct question. Like it was forcing me to apply what I knew to answer, like a scenario. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
One of my questions was sort of something like, why would it be harder to find like a stem cell like donor in like another country compared to like the UK? And then when I heard that question, I was sort of like, wait, what? Like I was confused.
Yeah.
And then I had to slowly realize like they're not actually asking me like why it's hard, but just to use my knowledge as to like how hard it can be to find donors and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it was just about applying what I knew to be able to answer the questions. And even for some questions, like even if you didn't know something, just even ask them to repeat the question, or like using what you did to sort of like navigate the question, and they will sort of steer you like in the right way for you to like eventually come to an answer. So I think the interview, it was interesting. Like if anything, like I got an opportunity to learn as well. Like for even things that I didn't know, like they could then sort of like correct me and like tell me, oh, this is what it actually does and stuff like that. So it felt like a conversation, which is what I liked. And then like I remember at the end of the interview, they actually asked me like, oh, I hope you know that we're based like in the Sheffield area, and obviously I didn't, but I was like, you know, like yeah, like I know, and it was so funny because I think they didn't know either that the school had told me something different. So it was interesting how that had happened, but yeah, it was a very intense but interesting process, a very long process. I think applications was like January, February, and then you sort of found out like May, June. So it was very intense and having to wait to hear an answer. But yeah.
That's mad. Because I was going to say, when you said West Midlands, I was like, the West Midlands Blood and Transplant is like the building next to where I am. So, and I've like definitely not seen you at any like network events or anything. So, love that. Such organisation. What do you think your like main tips are if someone was thinking of applying for like H&I?
I think for me, I would say like whether you have experience or not, especially if you don't have experience, I would say like read around your field. Like what I did was I actually looked up like, you know, papers to do with H&I, like even with his recent advancements or anything like that, like read around the field, speak about it in your application, because that just shows that even if you haven't done anything like physically in the lab or whatever, you actually are showing like the willingness to actually like learn and you're actually interested. At the end of the day, like it's a training position, so they want to make sure that you can be taught and stuff like that. So I think reading around your field would be important, actually following the course specification as well. They're literally telling you this is what we want to see in you. So it's like if you don't like actually read it and stick to it, it's sort of like how do you know what to put in your application if you're not actually reading that? So I think that was also something that really helped in my application. And speak to other trainees, like ask for their insight. Like I think even just mentioning that like you've spoken to like a trainee, or that you know what the program like is going to like require of you, just shows like that you have insight and whatnot. Like you're not just going into like blind, just assuming anything. So I think those are tips that I think I have that really helps me when I was applying.
Also, yeah, well done for finding people on H&I, because that was
It was difficult. I was typing in all types of things into LinkedIn, trying, but eventually I found someone, and they really helped me, so I was really grateful for that.
And yeah, you have your own Instagram now, so like, shameless plug, I will include it. I know you said you didn't have any NHS experience beforehand. Had you like previously done other jobs or whatever that you used in your application, or?
I hadn't had any like sciencey specific jobs, but like I remember like mentioning like working at like M&S or whatnot on my application, and then like the skills that I got from there and how transferable it can be to like my role and whatnot. Like if anything, that even just shows that you don't actually have to have anything specific to your specialism, just any experience that you've had, whether it's like working or like even talking about uni. Like I spoke about like practical work I had done at uni that had no like correlation with my specialism, but I spoke about the skills that I did there that I could use to apply to my specialism. So anything that can be applied, I think, is like worth putting in an application. Like, it's better to say more than to say like less, if that makes sense. So, yeah, spoke about like M&S, House of Fraser, like any job that I had that I could like write something about it, I mentioned.
Exactly. I think that's so important as well, because quite a lot of people that message me are like, oh, I've never worked in a lab or never done this sciencey job, and it's like, yeah, but think about like communication and teamwork and problem solving and stuff like that, and just pull them out instead. Fab. Is there anything else that you want to say or anything?
No, it's been an interesting talk, because it's good to be out of work today. So
yeah, it's nice to talk with you, because I think it's a specialism that not many people have even heard of, and obviously it's so crucial. So yeah, it's good to shed a bit of light on it. Yeah, thank you very much. Good luck with the rest of your essay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.